The doorbell rang at 7:43 p.m. sharp. I know this because I was 3 sips into a lukewarm beer and halfway through rewatching an old documentary about unsolved art heists, my kind of Saturday post-midlife. I wasn't expecting company, which already made the ring suspect. The kind of ring that either delivers religion, a scam, or chaos. I opened the door. It was chaos. A man stood there. Mid-20s. Tall, lean, and wearing the kind of nervous expression you can't fake. He had my jawline. My hair, minus the incoming gray. Eyes like mine too, but younger, unburdened. He cleared his throat. "You're Malcolm Grant?" he asked. "Depends on who's asking." "I'm Oliver. I'm your son." My grip tightened on the doorknob. Behind me, my wife, Claire, was stirring sauce in the kitchen like nothing seismic had just arrived on the front porch. "Sorry, what did you say?" I asked, because denial has muscle memory. "I'm your son," he repeated. "From Michelle. Michelle Hayes. You too, dated in college." I hadn't heard that name in over 2 decades. Michelle Hayes. Sweet girl. Art major. Used to draw on napkins during late-night diners. We lasted a semester. I took a slow breath. That's not possible. He reached into his coat and pulled out a photo. Young me. Young Michelle. Laughing in front of a Michigan State dorm. "Mom kept this. She told me about you right before she died." That word did something to my chest. Died. Like her name hadn't just been an echo, she'd been living, existing in a separate timeline. With him. Claire called from the kitchen. "Who is it?" "Someone looking for answers," I muttered. "You got a number I can call you at?" He nodded, pulled a card from his wallet. No drama. No tears. Just an awkward handoff of a life I never knew I started. When I shut the door, I knew the look on Claire's face wouldn't be curiosity. It would be calculation. And there it was. She leaned against the doorframe, one brow arched, lips thinning into a line of quiet fury. "He said, son." I nodded. She didn't throw anything. Didn't scream. Claire was a lawyer. Her fury took the form of forensic precision. "When were you going to tell me?" "I just found out." That's not the same as denying it. She turned back to the stove, sauce forgotten. "How old is he?" 20. "So you had him a year before we met." That's assuming he's telling the truth. "You recognized the girl, didn't you?" she asked, without turning. I didn't answer. The silence was enough. She killed the flame on the stove. "We'll talk later." But we didn't. Not that night. Because that's the thing with betrayal you didn't intend. It gets treated like the betrayal you did. That night I stayed up Googling Michelle's name. Found her obituary. Small town. Art teacher. Cancer. Survived by her son, Oliver. No mention of the father. Just that he finally found him. And for the first time in 20 years, I didn't know what version of myself I'd be waking up as. The next morning, Claire was gone. Not missing. Just gone. Her phone left behind, her side of the closet eerily empty. On the kitchen table sat a single sheet of paper. "Figure out who you are, Malcolm. I'm not going to do it for you." But what hit harder wasn't the note. It was the date on the calendar. The red circle I'd drawn a month ago. Our anniversary. Claire didn't just leave. She vanished like someone following a plan, not a tantrum. And trust me, there's a difference. One leaves mascara stains and slam doors. The other leaves no fingerprints. The first clue was the absence of chaos. No overturned drawers. No missing jewelry. Just calculated emptiness. The second? Her passport was gone. And the third? A receipt, stuffed halfway under a placemat. I would have missed it if I hadn't decided to scrub down the kitchen like my life depended on it. It sort of did. One night at the Granby Lodge. Not far. About an hour north, in the wine country where people pretend their marriages are made of oak barrels and not papier-mâché. So I drove. Not because I wanted a scene. Because I wanted an answer. Just one. And because if she really was staying at Granby, it meant she hadn't left me. Not yet. She was waiting to see what version of me would show up. Granby was pristine. All reclaimed wood and ambient jazz. I walked through the lobby like a man trying not to look like he was chasing his runaway wife. The clerk barely glanced up. "Can I help you, sir?" I slid the receipt across the counter. "I think my wife checked in last night." She glanced at it. Then at me. "Room 307. I didn't ask how she knew I wasn't a threat. Maybe I looked like a husband trying to rescue something. Maybe I looked like a guy who just found out he had a son and was losing a wife all in 24 hours. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Then, "Malcolm." Her voice was sleepy, thin. Like a dream you're not sure you want to keep having. She opened the door wearing the robe they give guests who order expensive cheese plates. Her hair was down, no makeup, and still, somehow, the most intimidating woman I'd ever met. I wasn't hiding, she said. I know. You tracked me here. I found a receipt. She exhaled through her nose. Of course. Can I come in? She stepped aside. The room was clean. Unslept and clean. As in, untouched. Her suitcase was closed. The bed was made. The cheese plate was still wrapped. You didn't stay here, I said. I needed somewhere to think. Somewhere not covered in 20 years of dust and history. I didn't lie to you, I said quietly. About Oliver. I didn't know. She nodded. That's not what broke me, Malcolm. Then what did? The fact that when I saw him on our doorstep, I didn't feel anything. Not betrayal. Not jealousy. Nothing. Just resignation. Like I'd already prepared for something like this. That's when it clicked. She hadn't left because of Oliver. Oliver was just the final nudge in a storm that had been brewing for years. You stopped expecting things from me a long time ago, I said. She didn't deny it. Just sat on the edge of the untouched bed. Maybe. Or maybe I got tired of reminding you who you used to be. I sat in the chair by the window. The wine country view was wasted on a conversation like this. I got a son, I said. Apparently. And I have a wife who's halfway out the door. I'm not sure who I'm supposed to be anymore. You could start with being someone who doesn't chase ghosts. Or guilt. There was silence for a long time. Then, she asked something strange. Do you still paint? I blinked. What? You used to paint. When we first met. Remember? I remembered. Vaguely. Before life turned into meetings and bills and mortgages. Before being responsible became a full-time personality. No, I said. Haven't touched a brush in 15 years. Maybe you should, she said, standing. You might remember who you were. Before all of this. She handed me the room key. I'm leaving. Keep the night. Think. Sleep. Or don't. But don't come home until you figure out what you want. She walked out with the kind of grace you can't fake. And just like that, I was alone. Again. With a room key and a view and the heavy realization that both my past and my future had arrived on the same weekend. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hey, it's Oliver. Can we talk? The coffee shop was Oliver's suggestion. Neutral ground. No emotional residue on the walls, no ghosts lurking in the upholstery. Just cappuccinos, quiet music, and the occasional overconfident barista spelling names like they're inventing them. He was already there when I arrived. Hood up, headphones off, sipping something iced and too sweet to be respectable. I sat across from him. No handshake this time. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. Neither was I. He nodded like that made sense. We sat there for a few seconds, two men, one awkward biology lesson apart. I studied him. He had a calm stillness, but there was tension underneath. Like someone who didn't want to need anything from me but couldn't help hoping anyway. So, I said, do we take a DNA test or just wait to see if we start finishing each other's sentences? He smiled. Your sarcasm's intact. That's something. Come standard. What do you want from me, Oliver? He took a breath. Honestly? I don't know. I'm not here to break up your life. Little late for that. He looked down. Right. Sorry. No. I mean, this was already cracking. You just showed up with a flashlight. He took another sip, then pulled something from his backpack. A canvas. Small, worn, corners frayed. He slid it across the table. It was a painting. Mine. From a lifetime ago. A blue and gold skyline. Rooftops bleeding into stars. I painted it in college, sold it at a sidewalk sale for gas money and bad pizza. I'd forgotten it existed. She kept it, he said. Hung it in our living room. My throat tightened. I looked at the canvas like it might disappear. She said you used to paint before you got practical, he added. She said that. He nodded. A lot. Something in me buckled then. Not dramatically, just a quiet collapse, like a shelf finally giving under the weight of everything left unsaid. She talked about you a lot, he said softly. Not like some romantic legend or tragic figure. Just like someone real. Someone who got away. I stared at the painting. Did she tell you why she didn't reach out? I asked. She tried, he said. You'd already transferred. Letters came back. She gave up after a while. I rubbed my temple. She should have tried harder. He didn't argue. I looked at him. You in school. Gap year, he said. Trying to figure out if I'm a painter or a bartender who doodles. There's a difference? Apparently, one of them has health insurance. That made me laugh. First time in days. You any good? I asked. He raised an eyebrow. Better than you at that age. Careful, I'm fragile. Another pause. Then he asked the question I didn't want him to. Are you going to be in my life? Or was this just curiosity closure? I didn't answer right away. I didn't know. Part of me wanted to run. Another part wanted to rewind time. Neither was helpful. I don't know how to be a father to an adult, I said. Good, he said. I don't need a father. I just need to know if I matter. That landed with the force of something final. He stood up, slung his bag over his shoulder. I'll let you think about it. He left the painting behind. Back at the Granby Lodge, I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt, not even because of Claire, but because of a canvas, 10 by 12 inches, that looked more like a mirror than a memory. And the next morning, as I stood staring at it, my phone buzzed. Claire. One line. Come home. We need to talk. And not about the kid. Claire didn't say much on the phone. Just that line, come home. We need to talk. And not about the kid. Which, if you're married long enough, you learn is code for, this isn't about you. Not entirely, but it still affects you. So I drove back. 1 hour through soft hills and winding roads, past the kind of houses where marriages probably had problems too, but with better landscaping. When I got home, she was waiting. Not at the door. She wasn't that cinematic. But the porch light was on. Her car was in the driveway. And there was music coming from the kitchen, Miles Davis. Which either meant she was calm, or she wanted to look like she was. I walked in. She was chopping vegetables. Again with the chopping. Carrots this time. She had a thing about cutting things up when she was emotional. It gave her hands something to do while her heart ran laps. Hey, I said. Hey, she replied, without looking up. Dinner's almost ready. I glanced at the table. 2 plates, 2 glasses of wine, 1 bottle already opened. We were pretending, apparently. Didn't expect wine, I said, pulling out a chair. You drink more when you're cornered. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Am I cornered? No. Just seated for questioning. The carrots hit the pan with a hiss. She turned down the heat and finally looked at me. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between curiosity and quiet resentment. Like someone trying to remember why they ever bought a blender that only made noise. I've been thinking, she said. Me too. She poured the wine. I took a sip before she could sit, like I needed armor. I'm not mad about Oliver, she said. At least not in the way you think. Okay. I'm mad that when he showed up, it felt like you were more yourself in 5 minutes with him than you've been with me in 5 years. I didn't argue. I don't know if it's because he's your blood, or because you got to be surprised again, she said. But it made me realize something. She paused, pushed her plate aside. We're good at being familiar, Malcolm. That's our thing. We can finish each other's sentences. Grocery lists. Tax forms. But we're terrible at mystery. She looked at me like she was waiting for the punchline to land. When was the last time we were curious about each other? I opened my mouth. Closed it. She kept going. I know your routines. You know mine. You sigh before you lie. I eat chocolate when I'm about to cry. We're an algorithm. That's what 20 years does, I said. Sure, she nodded. But that's not what 20 years is supposed to do. We're not a marriage anymore. We're an arrangement. The air in the kitchen tightened. I stared at the wall. The calendar was still on June. It was August. I don't want to separate, she said suddenly. I just want to reset. Reset? Yeah, like a controlled burn. Clear the brush so something can grow. And how does that work exactly? She leaned back in her chair. We stop pretending we're fine. We start being honest, even if it's ugly. And we stop trying to fix each other. You paint. I write. We find ourselves without asking the other to hold the mirror. I blinked. You write. I used to. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time in years, I didn't see wife. I saw Claire, the girl I met at a gallery opening, who wore mismatched socks and quoted Virginia Woolf, who told me she hated wine but drank it anyway because it made her feel intellectual. She looked older now, sharper, and maybe a little dangerous, like someone who finally realized she doesn't owe the world softness. Okay, I said. Let's try that. We ate in silence after that. Not the awkward kind. The kind where the air finally feels breathable again. After dinner, she pulled a small box from the hall closet. I hadn't seen it in years. Inside were my brushes. Found these in the garage, she said. Thought they might want to come back inside. And that was it. No grand apology. No vow renewal. Just 2 people deciding to stop lying to themselves, starting with dinner. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because we were mad, but because we agreed to give each other space. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up to a text from an unknown number. I know who your son is, and it's not who you think. Attached, a photo. It wasn't Oliver. It was Claire. Pregnant. The photo stared back at me like it had been waiting years for this moment. Claire, 20 years younger. Long hair, softer cheeks. Wearing the green sweater I used to steal from her closet when mine was in the wash. One hand resting over a slightly rounded stomach. The other holding a sign, October 2004. Pregnant. I sat up in bed, heart thumping in that slow, hollow way that tells you something is wrong but you haven't caught up to it yet. My first thought wasn't even what is this? It was who sent it? No message. Just the image and the line. I know who your son is. And it's not who you think. I stared at the screen until it went black. Then stared at the darkness like maybe it would explain things better. Because here's the kicker. I knew that sweater. I knew that kitchen. That photo wasn't from someone else's life. It was from mine. Which meant someone knew something I didn't. Again, I paced the room, every step clicking louder in my head. The guest room felt smaller with every unanswered question piling up in the corners. Finally, I walked to the master bedroom. Claire was asleep, one arm above her head like she always did when the room was too warm. The moonlight hit her face just enough to remind me how long we'd been together. You don't spend 2 decades with someone and expect to find secrets in the attic. But here we were. I didn't wake her. Not yet. I went to the garage. There's a box in every long marriage that nobody talks about. Ours was labeled Spring Cleaning 2005, which was code for stuff we didn't want to throw out but didn't want to look at either. I dug through it like a man possessed. Photos. Receipts. A baby name book. I didn't even remember buying it. Then I found a sonogram. No name. No date. Just the image of something becoming human. My hand shook. I sat on the concrete floor, legs numb, heart louder than it had any right to be. Claire had been pregnant. In 2004. Before Oliver was even a possibility. And she never told me. By the time the sun started pushing through the garage windows, I was still on the floor. Not because I didn't want to move. Because I couldn't. When I finally stood, it wasn't anger that powered me. It was clarity. That same quiet, ice water clarity that hits you when you realize your marriage isn't the thing you thought you were in. It's something else entirely. I made coffee, poured 2 cups, walked back upstairs and placed one beside her on the nightstand. She blinked awake. You're up early. You were pregnant in 2004. No preamble. No soft landing. Her eyes opened fully, fast. Mally, don't lie. She sat up, pulled the sheet around her like it could defend her from the truth. You weren't supposed to find that. But I did. She closed her eyes. I lost it. 8 weeks in. I was going to tell you, but then. I wasn't. I don't know. You don't forget something like that. I didn't forget, she said, voice thin. I buried it. I let the silence sit there until it got too loud to ignore. Why hide it? Because, she said, we weren't ready. You were broke. I was scared. I went to the clinic alone, and when they said there was no heartbeat, I didn't cry. I just felt relief. And that made me hate myself. I swallowed hard. And after that, she continued, it never felt like something we could bring up without it breaking us. You still could have told me. She looked at me then, tears close but not spilling. We had just started building something stable. And I didn't want to turn it into grief. But it already was, I said. You just carried it alone. She nodded. Yeah, I did. I leaned against the door frame, suddenly older than I felt yesterday. I thought Oliver showing up was the twist, I said. But now I feel like I'm in a story I didn't write. Didn't sign up for. Claire picked up the coffee. So what now? I didn't have an answer. Instead, I showed her the message. The photo. Her in the sweater. Her holding that sign. Someone has this, I said. Someone sent it. Why? She looked at the phone. I don't know. But that was taken in my sister's kitchen. Lena. She nodded slowly. I never told her about the pregnancy. But she might have seen the photo. And Claire stared out the window. And Lena's never liked our marriage. I exhaled. Okay. Great. So we're being haunted by your sister's old camera roll. Apparently. Why send it now? Claire met my eyes. Because now there's Oliver. Now there's a crack in the marriage she's always said would break. I rubbed my temples. So what do we do? Claire stood, walked over, and put a hand on my chest. We get ahead of the story. We tell it ourselves. No more surprises. I agreed. We'd tell the story. All of it. But that night, as I lay in bed, I got another text. This time, from a different number. Ask her where she was on June 11th, 2005. Attached, a second photo. Claire again. Only this time, she wasn't alone. She was holding a baby. The photo was grainy, like it had been scanned from an old print. But even in poor resolution, the truth was sharp enough to cut skin. Claire, standing outside a brick building, some kind of clinic or hospital. Her hair pulled back, no makeup, wearing a pale pink hoodie I vaguely remembered. Cradled in her arms, a baby. Swaddled. Tiny. Real. My fingers trembled as I zoomed in, like getting closer would make the memory crawl out of hiding. The timestamp on the photo, June 11th, 2005. She hadn't just been pregnant. She'd given birth. And never told me. I didn't wake her this time. I couldn't. Not until I figured out what kind of man I'd been sleeping beside for 20 years. Instead, I sat in the kitchen, alone, with the photo glowing from my phone like a haunted lantern. I called the number that had sent it. Straight to voicemail. No ID. Just static. When the sun came up, I was still staring at it. Claire came down, yawning. Paused when she saw me. You didn't sleep. No, I said. But you did. She poured coffee without asking. Took a sip. And that's when I slid the phone across the table. She didn't touch it. Just looked. And looked. And finally whispered, "Oh, that's all you've got?" I said. Claire sat. Slowly. Like her body knew this moment would be seismic. Where was I on June 11th? She repeated. Yes. That's the question. She closed her eyes. I was in Rochester. At my aunt's place. No. I said, voice hard now. You were at a clinic. Holding a baby. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then opened it again. I wasn't ready to tell you, she said. Not then. Not ever. You had a child? Yes. With me? No. The room dropped a few degrees. I was with someone, she said, voice thin. Before you. Briefly. Before we got serious. I stood. And you were pregnant when we started dating? She nodded. You told me you'd been single for a year. I lied, she said quietly. Because I didn't want to scare you off. Because I didn't think you would ever matter. Who's the father? His name was Jonah. He was complicated. You kept the baby? She nodded again. Her name is Ivy. My legs went numb. I sat back down. She's 20, Claire said. Lies with Jonah's sister in Colorado. I send money. I get updates. I've met her. But she doesn't know about you. She doesn't know about us. You've been a mother this whole time, I said. And you never told me. I didn't want to break this, she said, gesturing between us. But you did, I said. You just took your time. Claire rubbed her eyes. I was scared. And selfish. And I thought if I buried it deep enough, it wouldn't bleed into our life. But secrets always bleed, I said. Eventually. I know. We sat in silence. The kind that isn't quiet, just loaded. I need air, I muttered. I walked outside. The driveway shimmered in morning heat. Birds chirped. Sprinklers hissed in some neighbor's yard. My world had just shifted on its axis, and everything else kept acting like it didn't notice. Claire followed me a few minutes later. You should meet her, she said. Excuse me. Ivy, she said. You should meet her. Why? Because you deserve the whole story. And so does she. She's not mine. No, Claire said. But you're in it now. I shook my head. You should have told me. I know, she whispered. There was no good ending to that conversation. Just a slow walk back inside, where the air felt thicker than before. That evening, another message came through. Same unknown number. You think Claire's the only one with secrets? Ask Oliver where he was last summer. June 14th, Chicago. Ask him who paid for the hotel. Another photo. Oliver. Stepping out of a cab. Next to Claire. I stared at the photo of Oliver and Claire outside that hotel in Chicago. June 14th. 3 months before he showed up on my doorstep. Claire had told me she didn't know him, that her reaction was genuine. But this photo said otherwise. That night, I confronted her. You met him. In Chicago. She didn't deny it. Just looked tired. Resigned. Yes. I did. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to know if he was who he said he was before I brought that into our life. You lied. I protected you. There's a fine line between those two things. Turns out, it's paper thin when your marriage is already cracked. He reached out to me first, she said. Sent a message to my firm. Said he believed he was your son. I didn't respond for weeks. And then, I got curious. Scared, maybe. So I met him in Chicago. One day. That's all. What did you talk about? You. The version of you I fell in love with. The version of you he never got to know. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just whispered. So you knew he was coming. I didn't know when. But yes, I knew. I walked out again. I was getting good at that. It was Oliver who gave me the final piece of the puzzle. We met again. Neutral ground. A park bench near the old train station. I need the truth, I said. All of it. He nodded. I figured this would come up. You and Claire met in Chicago. She told me. Why didn't you? Because I wanted to come to you clean. But she didn't want to wait. She said she wanted to feel something real again. That stuck. What does that mean? She told me her marriage felt like wallpaper. Beautiful but flat. She wanted to peel something back. I exhaled. Did she ever say I wasn't your father? He shook his head. She said she believed you were. But there was always a maybe. I paused. Are you? He smiled. Does it matter anymore? Yes. And also, strangely, no. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a painting. I spent the next 3 weeks in a rented studio across town. I stopped answering Claire's messages. I didn't return Oliver's calls. I painted. 12 pieces. Abstract. Sharp. Stark. Full of everything I hadn't said. Then I booked a gallery space. Invited them both. Opening night, Claire arrived first. She wore that red dress. The one she bought after the Chicago trip. Oliver arrived second. Looking unsure. When the lights dimmed and the spotlights hit the first canvas, the crowd murmured. Whispers. Curiosity. Then recognition. Because the paintings weren't just abstract. They were coded memories. Each one captured a moment they thought I hadn't noticed. The hotel lobby. The clinic. The couch in our living room where she whispered into a phone at 2 a.m. One painting had a single title. The wife who vanished before she left. I didn't make a scene. I didn't say a word. I just watched them both as the room began to understand. Claire's face drained. Oliver looked away. That night, I sold every piece. Proceeds? Donated. To a fund for children in foster care. Because some people grow up without the truth. Others grow up with too much of it. I left the next morning. Quietly. No note. No second act. Just disappeared. I moved 4 towns over. Took a job restoring old murals in a library no one visits. Started sketching again. Drinking coffee without conversation. Learning to like silence when it isn't holding secrets. Claire emailed once. I saw your interview. They called your show haunting. You didn't even use my name. You erased me so well. I didn't reply. Oliver emailed too. Different tone. I still want to know you. Even if you're not my father. That one I responded to. Let's take it slow. Some truths need room to breathe. The past didn't need fixing. It needed framing. And sometimes the best revenge isn't watching them suffer. It's making sure they see you survive.